So you had some thoughts on kettlebell swings?
Well, the thoughts actually began last Friday, where I was training with good buddy and a very accomplished strength coach, and we were doing belt squats in his gym. He's got a belt squat, just trying to get after some new things. In my career of lifting, haven't always had a belt squat available. We had one out in LA a couple weeks ago, and it's real old. It felt really yuck. The one that you have in Fort Lauderdale, it was a smoother, so just something to try. So, we're talking during our rest. We're doing heavy sets of triples, so we're taking some rest in between, and just started to talk about the squat and how a lot of people may have a disfavorable overall opinion on the squat, and all these people's messages get garbled, etc. I think a lot of the utility of the squat really boils down to its execution. I don't think there's really anything wrong with the squat, but rather there's something wrong with, to paraphrase Dan John, there's something wrong with the way they're squatting. And I think because the squat is something that a lot of people get into without any kind of really keen instruction, you can do a squat with a very, very significant amount of weight and figuratively get 3 white lights. Now, this isn't about powerlifting. This is that you can get up and down. You can put the bar on your back and take a couple steps backwards and bend over and get back up. And most people would consider that a good squat. And you'll probably get some kind of benefit out of that. But the benefit is going to come along with a lot of cost, primarily through the risk of orthopedic injury if you're squatting a certain way. So I don't think it's big an issue of squatting per se, different ways of squatting, but rather the execution of it. And the analogy to that brought me to an experience that I had yesterday where in a different gym, a fellow asked me to critique his kettlebell swing, where I was doing swings, and I think inherently he saw that my swing looked very different than his. And I think it's the same thing. With the popularity of kettlebell training, I think a lot of people either just watch someone else or pick up a video. There's not a lot of expert instruction in the kettlebell swing, so you can pick up a bell and do something that a lot of people will think that that's ideal form or that's ideal execution, and there's really a lot of room to be coached. So this is very interesting. I don't know that this inefficient performance of kettlebell swing has the same risk of the squat, but the analogy is that a lot of people can do a movement or do an exercise and call it something, and it meets a lot of people's expectations when in fact I think we can probably do a lot better. So what I saw this individual doing, and I'll get up in a moment to show you with the bell, when I like to think of the kettlebell swing as almost 2 concentric movements. I actually don't think you're swinging the bell at all. I think if you're swinging, if you really feel like you're swinging the bell, I think there's probably something that's not quite right. I think this fellow was swinging the bell into the hole, into the hike, and he looked really, really aggressive and snappy at the top. I think what we should be doing, and again, my exposure to kettlebell swing is hard style. I know we talked about Pavel probably last several weeks, but this is when it comes to these particular topics, this is my influence on how these movements and exercises would be executed. It should almost be an active, long snap, like in the game of American football, where this should be a concentric movement of throwing the kettlebell into your deep hinge. Now, there's an overspeed eccentric, and I think that's probably how we'll say, I'm going to do this kettlebell swing at 50% intensity, where maybe I'm not as aggressively or ruthlessly throwing the bell into the hike, versus a 95 to 100% swing, where you are trying to throw the kettlebell into the next county as you drop back into the hinge. And that's not what he was doing. It actually looked like his arms were really, really long, and he was very, very swingy. I think he was still attacking the hinge and attacking the private area, so you get out of the way and get into a hinge. But there was something that just wasn't quite right. And I think that something was this dialing in of the shoulders through the lats when the biceps meet the rib cage, and that creates what feels to me like almost a concentric movement of throwing the kettlebell, even though there's this eccentric, by definition, muscle contraction, what's happening below the waist. I think there should be this concentric in your external focus, concentric throwing, and I don't see a lot of people that are doing this, and I'm not quite sure why. I tend to think the reason is the same thing that we saw with the squat, where there's not a lot of expert opinion. So what I told this fellow was, I said, if you can get like the same weight kettlebell, or even if you only have one, see if you can go outside and actually hike the kettlebell behind you, let go, then try a couple different techniques. You can even decide what those strategies are of what you're doing with your body or your hands or your head or whatever, and whichever bell goes the furthest, that's the technique that I think you should try. And then when you come back to your next kettlebell training session, you'll go for 5 reps on the minute, maybe 10 seconds on the minute if you want to go a little bit longer. 5 reps, maybe 10, you get 7 or 8 reps in 10 seconds, depending on your intensity. Now, this 5 reps on the minute has got a lot of value, because if we're going to go 95 to 100% on your intensity of the swing, where it's an over speed eccentric and you're ruthlessly throwing the bell into the hike, you'll rest roughly 52, 53 seconds, and you probably will still be able to maintain your mental focus. You won't be acidotic. Again, these are the things that continue to motivate me. So if I'm going to talk about something, and this is what I think about, you'll be able to work on the external cue of whatever it is that you decided of throwing that bell deep behind you. So I think what also helped was the understanding of when the biceps, or when your upper arm feels like it meets your rib cage, that's when it's go time, where you're enjoying the flow. If I just stand up here and show you, where enjoying the flow, stay there. And then once the biceps meets, then you get after it and you throw real hard. And I think once you tried that, you'll find that the technique is snappy. And then when you understand what are all the different cues, there might be a dozen, maybe 15 different things you can actually be really, really precise on the kettlebell swing. And once you feel like you nailed 5 on the minute, you try it again, 5 on the minute, whatever, 3 times, whatever you might have been doing, then you try something else. And you're going to keep getting better at each of the new components to your swing, and you'll lose one, and then you get better at another. And this is the whole idea of variable practice, which is really almost a necessary component to skill acquisition. And the kettlebell swing 5 on the minute gives you a lot of ways, not just to get better at the swing, but to understand how being miserably fatigued in an acute state minimizes or limits or sometimes negates the factors of skill acquisition. So if we're trying to get better at a skill, then it's going to be very, very difficult to do that under very high levels of fatigue. And there's actually even more links from what an acidotic environment creates into skill acquisition and fascial changes and adaptations. So we started off with the squat and really made an interesting analogy, at least in my mind, that you can do a squat a lot of different ways. You can do a kettlebell swing a lot of different ways. These are 2 very, very popular exercises that really don't always seem to need a lot of expert instruction. But if you can get the expert instruction in the swing, you can then apply some of these ideas of anti-glycolytic training and motor skill acquisition, variable practice, and then picking the right cues that create an emotional experience. And you're checking a lot of boxes, not just for your own training, because obviously, if you're going to go 20 to 40 minutes of 5 swings on the minute with maybe 20 to 30% of your weight, you're going to do a lot of really good things for your work capacity. And there's probably a lot of other exercises that you can do in that work to rest ratio. But it was just something that moved me a little bit. We were talking about the squat, a lot of different ways to do a squat, but because you can do something, and most people would say, yeah, that's a good squat. I think we see a lot of the same things with the kettlebell swing, and it just made me think as I was trying to help this fellow who asked me to critique his swing and get a lot more aggressive, even in a less than 100% swing in the hike position.
So is that something that when, like, let's say the bell size increases, or we're trying to work on one arm swings, can that same kind of process be applied?
Yeah, I don't. One of the things that I've done in coaching some of the ballistic kettlebell hinge, you should set up every weight, or you should set up a little baby Pikachu 4-kilo kettlebell, and then a 24 and a 48, and they should all look the same. But you should be able to apply the same technique with any size bell. I don't think there's a different way to swing just based on the size of the bell. Your intensity may be governed, but I think a 50% swing should have the same technical check marks as 100% swing of any weight. It's just the maybe we'll govern the percentage of intensity based on your intent of the overspeed eccentric into the hole in the hike, and how viciously or aggressively you stand up into that vertical standing plank. And you can go to the same external cue, external focus of letting go of the bell outside to see what external cues create the emotional experience, and they'll have probably a deeper meaning and make it easier to cement and be more have a higher frequency of success at delivering that type of a swing with that kind of a technique.
So if one bell size is not like the other, it's not necessarily meant to just let's add speed or try to just do more reps for the sake of doing more reps.
Hey, that's one of the incredible values of kettlebell swing. All of the above. Obviously, you should be able to do more reps with a lighter bell than a heavier bell. I'm talking more on the technical execution, where I don't think the size of the bell should change your technique. If I have an empty bar or 5 wheels on the bar, I should be squatting with the same technique. And if I can use the same technique with a lot of different weights, I think that's a very, very good form of movement variability that has a lot of value beyond the physiological effects of why we picked this exercise in the first place.
So that would really tie into like the precision of the skill?
Precision of skill, I would probably define as being able to do something in a certain way the first time.
Okay.
But being able to hit those check marks under a variance of different conditions, which I think is what you're asking,
yeah.
I'd call that mastery of skill. To be resilient to unique or random stressors to an already satisfactory skill. Can you maintain high levels of tension with a very light weight? Can you maintain satisfactory lower levels of tensions with a very, very high weight? All of these things are going to be examples of variability, and these are things that can be trained with a different purpose. Can I maintain power output in a swing by using one cue but not another? And if I can, that's probably a really, really good example of mastery of skill in a double leg hinging pattern.
Okay, so if, let's say, people are currently following a program on their own right now, self-programmed or from somebody else, how could they add this, let's say just testing or this into their current routine to see where they're at?
It's interesting on how do you actually measure a factor of positivity in the swing. Unless you're on a force plate, it's kind of difficult to do. If you're not already doing 5 on the minute, etc., maybe take a couple weeks of, you can probably do it every day, 5 on the minute, and then go back to the workout that you were doing. So how about you take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and use 20 to 30% of your body weight. Just pick something that lives in the middle there and go even in addition to your workout. Don't do it at the end or the beginning, but if you can get 2 a day, any day you can get 2 a day, you're going to go take your swing. So I'm 190 something pounds. So I'll use a 24 kilo if I was going to do this. And if I, as many times a week as I can, I'm going to go 5 on the minute for 20 to 40 minutes. There's a lot of things that are happening. Each time, each 5 reps, I'm going to feed forward my tension and try to do something that I feel like I'm not doing. Maybe I'm going to grind my heels into the mat. Maybe I'm really going to finish at the top. Maybe I'm really going to drive into an overspeed eccentric. Maybe I'm going to make sure my head position stays where I want it to be. Maybe I'm going to think in my head if I let go of this bell, it would go into the next county. I'm going to think of something every time. If I don't do it, I'm going to try that one again. And then go back in 3 weeks' time, go back to whatever your Metcon or whatever nonsense you want to call it, and let's see if your work capacity, because I think the kettlebell swing is probably not a strength or power exercise. I think it's a cardio. It's a conditioning exercise. It's a work capacity exercise. And I think we can and start to see, did this actually work? And that's actually a whole nother topic that I don't think we do enough. We don't try things. We don't just, like what I just said was just being this incredibly low level of science. I'm suggesting that 5 reps on the minute is going to create a lot of solutions. Well, just test something else. Maybe you would test active straight leg raise. Maybe you would test max deadlift. Maybe you would test repetitions of a very, very heavy kettlebell until you were done based on how you or someone else determined your technical proficiency. What I'm actually interested is pick some other workout that has nothing to do with the hinge or posterior chain, and let's see if your work capacity changes. And I think that you have a lot of reasons to believe that it would.
Awesome. And in a couple weeks, you're going to be in Orlando, right?
Orlando, November 11th and 12th, charlieweingroff.com.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot.